Chapter 79. After the introductions and my address, it was time to decide the matchups for the tournament. The round of 16 would be held today, the 5th day of the festival. The quarterfinals and semifinals would follow tomorrow, on the 6th day, and finally, the grand championship match would take place on the 7th and final day of the festival. The championship bout would be held in the morning, followed by the long-awaited opening ceremony of the labyrinth. That meant 8 matches today, 6 tomorrow, and only a single decisive battle on the final day. No third-place match this time. Each competitor stepped forward to draw their number in turn, the atmosphere thick with tension and excitement. Once all 16 numbers were taken, they were placed into a velvet bag. One by one, I drew them at random. Soka would be announcing each pairing aloud as it's added into the glowing bracket projected above the stage. And the results were as follows. The final bracket was as follows. 1. Gobta vs Foss. 2. Katarina vs Gai. 3. Shizu vs Stella. 4. Geld vs Bavix. 5. Lion Mask vs Equix. 6. Hakuro vs Seal. 7. Masayuki vs Jinrai. 8. Shinsha vs Luna. Quite the lineup, if I do say so myself. Fate or perhaps irony seemed to have a peculiar sense of humor today. Hakuro, poor man, had drawn the short straw of destiny. I could already envision the outcome. Against Seal, even the most seasoned swordsman would find himself overwhelmed. The same could be said for anyone who ended up facing my daughters. Luna and Shinsha, however. I wasn't entirely sure how that one would go. I'd never actually seen those two fight, and the idea of watching them clash stirred a spark of curiosity within me. As for Masayuki, well, that ridiculous luck of his was still going strong. As Seal put it, his unique skill, chosen one, had completely bent the draw in his favor. I sighed inwardly. While I pondered that, the first match was already about to begin. The other fighters had stepped out of the arena, returning to their waiting area to prepare for their turns. Shinsha, whose battle was scheduled for the very last, came straight to my box and promptly made herself comfortable on my lap, no less. I didn't stop her. The VIP area was partitioned by enchanted walls that dampened most outside sound, allowing its occupants a measure of privacy. The entrances were also well guarded. No one could enter without my permission. I had considered sitting with the other dignitaries, if only for formality's sake, but Ren and Testarossa had firmly advised against it. Ren, ever the professional, had put it succinctly. My lady, it would be improper for the ruler of Tempest to share the same seating as her guests. Your presence alone demands a position befitting your station. With that, the matter had been settled. I remained where I was Queen of Tempest, surrounded by my retainers, and with one mischievous daughter curled happily in my lap as the opening match was about to begin. I looked down at the arena while gently stroking Shinsha's hair. She'd already closed her eyes, leaning further into me with a small, content hum. Her warmth against me was soothing, a strange contrast to the tension building below. On the field stood Gobta and Foss, facing each other beneath the roaring anticipation of the crowd. Gobta wore his usual grin, broad, cocky, and utterly convinced of his victory. That smug confidence irked me just a little. Honestly, he's probably thrilled to have drawn someone who looks weaker than the rest. If it had been Hakuro or Seal across from him instead, I was certain he'd be trembling like a leaf and surrendering before the match even began. I made a mental note to remind him later that cowardice in my tournament would not go unpunished. Across from him, Foss, the fox-type lycanthrope, looked both eager and cautious. Her golden slit eyes gleamed with sharp focus, her tail flicking behind her in restrained anticipation. I remembered meeting her a few times before in Tempest. Gobta drew his short sword, his stance deceptively relaxed, while Foss unsheathed her twin daggers, the steel glinting under the midday light. Both were ready. The crowd held its breath as Soka raised her hand to signal the start. Ready, begin. At Soka's sharp signal, Foss shot forward like a streak of red lightning. Ha! She cried, her twin daggers flashing in the sun as she closed the gap in a heartbeat. Gobta barely managed to roll aside, her blades slicing through the air where he'd just been. Gah, that's too fast, he yelped, scrambling to his feet and jumping backward in panic. The crowd laughed, some cheering for Foss, others for Gobta's comically desperate retreat. Realizing he couldn't win in close quarters, Gobta raised his hand and chanted, "Icicle Lance." A spear of ice shot toward Foss, followed by another, then another in rapid succession. Foss's daggers flashed, deflecting the shards with precise slashes, each impact ringing with sharp metallic chimes. But Gobta didn't stop, he kept firing, forcing her to stay on the defensive. His grin returned as he shouted, "Hey! Let's see you keep up with this." The barrage of ice filled the arena like a sudden blizzard. Foss darted and twisted through it, her fox tail whipping behind her as she sliced through the projectiles, but the constant assault left her with no opening to counterattack. From my seat, I could only sigh. Typical Gobta, relying on underhanded tricks. Shinsha giggled softly from my lap, her voice drowsy but teasing. "He's funny, though. Think he'll actually win?" Difficult to say, I murmured, noting how Foss's movements began to lose their sharpness. Gobta might seem like a fool, but when the moment truly matters, he reveals an unexpected brilliance. Foss's sharp eyes narrowed. She realized deflecting and dodging endlessly would only play into Gobta's hands. With a deep breath, her aura flared. In an instant, her body shimmered with light. Her silhouette blurred, then reshaped, ears lengthening, her fox tail fanning out, claws extending from her hands and feet. Though her form remained mostly human, the wild aura of a true beast radiated from her like heat from a forge. The crowd gasped, half in awe, half in fear. Gobta froze mid-step. "Wah hey, hold on, that's not fair. You look way scarier now." Foss's lips curved into a smirk. "Then stop running." And she vanished. With a sudden burst of speed, Foss lunged. Gobta barely managed to roll backward again, shouting, "Whoa, time out." "Time out, just kidding." He twisted midair and landed awkwardly on his feet before bolting in the opposite direction. Foss growled and gave chase, daggers flashing. Gobta spun around just long enough to shout another spell. "Icicle Lance." Spears of ice whistled through the air once more. Foss deftly ducked beneath the first, leapt over the second, and sliced through the third, but the constant barrage slowed her momentum. Gobta, meanwhile, was already halfway across the arena. The battle quickly devolved into a ridiculous game of cat and mouse, Foss lunging, Gobta fleeing, both moving in a blur of motion and magical shards. The audience began to turn restless. "Stop running away. Fight like a warrior. Face her head on, you coward." But Gobta ignored all of it, yelling as he ran, "Hey, tactics are part of fighting. Strategy over strength, people." From my box, I sighed, lightly stroking Shinsha's hair as she snickered into my chest. "He calls it strategy, but I think he's just scared." Shinsha giggled, eyes half closed. "He's funny. I like him." I let out a quiet sigh, shaking my head in mild exasperation. "I retract my earlier praise," I murmured dryly. "So much for unexpected brilliance." Finally giving in, I decided to communicate directly with Gobta through thought communication. "All right, Gobta, stay focused. Show me what you've got and beat her. If you win, I'll give you that new fishing pole you wanted." Really? Then I'm pulling out my last resort." "Okay." If he had a last resort, I really wished he'd used it sooner. But at least my bribery worked. Knowing Gobta, that probably should have been my first tactic. Still, something felt off. Watching his movements, I realized he'd been purposefully trying to lose while making it look like he was doing his best. Typical Gobta. Now, though, he suddenly stopped running. Foss, caught off guard by the sudden shift, slowed down, cautious and confused, watching carefully to see what he would do next. "Summon. Okay, come on over." As the captain of the Goblin Riders, that meant only one thing: he could summon a Starwolf and unify with it. When he did, his power shot up to the level of an A-, monster, bolstered further by the sword skills Hakuro had hammered into him. Against an average beast man, he could more than hold his own. Truly, Gobta, was it so difficult to begin with that? I murmured, letting out a slow sigh. At this point, I can only assume he was eager to lose. But at least now he was serious about. A dark-colored blur slammed into Foss at top speed, sending her flying to the very edge of the arena before anyone could react. The wolf wagged his tail proudly beside Gobta, his eyes gleaming. There was no mistaking him. It couldn't be anyone but Ranga. Foss recovered quickly, springing back to her feet and sprinting toward Gobta. A good strategy: defeating Gobta first was the right choice. By attacking him directly, she could also create distance from the arena's edge, reducing her chances of being disqualified by stepping out. Or at least, I could have called it a good plan, if the summoned wolf wasn't Ranga. Ranga was far faster and stronger than any normal Starwolf, and since he'd been constantly absorbing my magicals while resting in my shadow, he was even more powerful now. As Foss closed the distance, Ranga lunged, a blur of dark fur and wind. Foss barely dodged in time, her hair whipping violently in the gust of his passing. But Ranga didn't relent. He spun around and gave chase. The tide of battle had completely turned. Now, it was Foss who was dodging and running under Ranga's relentless onslaught. Gobta, refusing to let the opportunity slip by, immediately began casting Icicle Lance in rapid succession. Shards of ice rained toward Foss, forcing her to dodge and break her stance. That brief distraction was all Ranga needed. With a low growl, he surged forward, his massive frame cutting through the wind like a shadowed bullet, and slammed straight into Foss. Wah! She barely had time to react before she was sent flying backward, crashing across the stone floor and tumbling out of the arena boundary. And the winner is Goop-ta-a-a-a-a-a. Sokka's proclamation was drowned out by the cheers. Given the lack of booing from the crowd, everyone must have accepted summons as fair game in this match. Then moments later Sokka lifted her hand high, her voice echoing through the arena. Now presenting our next match. Katarina, the Chaos Princess against Gai, the Master of the Flowing Blade. As Kat and Gai stepped into the arena, a faint worry stirred within me. I had never seen her fight before. She was strong, yes, but strength alone didn't guarantee safety. No matter how capable one might be, injuries were always a possibility. My gaze lingered on Kat, a quiet unease tightening in my chest. Ren, noticing my worry, only smiled faintly, the corner of her lips curving upwards. Then Shinsha, still sitting comfortably on my lap, spoke up without even opening her eyes. Don't worry, Mummy, Kat's always wearing Aegis. It's an armor you can't normally see unless it takes a hit. It's mythic grade, so it's basically impossible to damage her with anything lower. She said it so casually, almost proud, that I couldn't help but sigh in relief. Of course she is, I murmured, brushing a hand through Shinsha's hair. Causing chaos and all that is fine, but I'll never forgive anyone who hurts my children. And naturally, Ren couldn't resist the perfect opportunity to get under my skin. Leaning close again, her voice was soft and far too amused as she whispered. See, my lady, that's exactly the reason the future me calls you a doting parent. Ren, I snapped, glaring at her. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she stepped back with a faint, satisfied smile, completely unfazed, her eyes glimmering with quiet mischief. I could tell what she was thinking, too. She probably finds me glaring at her with red cheeks cute, instead of scary. As I was trying to calm myself down, Sokka's voice rang across the arena. Ready, and begin. The crowd roared as the battle commenced. Gai moved first. He planted his feet firmly, body low, and thrust his sword forward with impressive precision. The strike was sharp and fluid, his movements almost like a flowing stream, smooth and relentless. Ah, so that's where the flowing swordsman comes from, I mused, mildly impressed. But before the tip of his blade could reach her, Kat had already crossed her dual swords in front of her, catching the blow cleanly. The impact rang out a sharp metallic clang, and the audience gasped. Her expression didn't waver, calm, focused, and confident. Gai didn't stop there. The moment his blade was caught, he twisted his wrist and flowed into another strike, a diagonal slash that turned into a fluid spin, then a rapid thrust. Each motion linked seamlessly into the next, like water finding its path through stone. A fine display of technique, fast, precise, and relentless. But Kat handled it all with effortless grace. Her twin blades moved as if they already knew where his sword would go before he did. A parry here, a deflection there, light, minimal movements that wasted no energy. Sparks danced in the air with every clash, but she never lost her rhythm. To her, it seemed less like a fight and more like a dance she had already mastered. Gai gritted his teeth, doubling his speed, his sword leaving faint trails of light as he unleashed a flurry of strikes. Yet Kat, my daughter, didn't even take a step back. Her expression remained calm, almost bored, as she brushed aside another attack with a flick of her wrist. I could tell, she wasn't fighting seriously. Not yet. Don't get so full of yourself just because I've been taking it easy. Gai spat, anger searing his features. Kat's eyes narrowed, but she stayed eerily calm. Full of myself, taking it easy, please. The only person allowed to take it easy on me is my mommy. Gaia's smile twisted into something ugly, madness bleeding into his tone. Hey, you're just as weak and useless as your mommy, he sneered. I was 2 seconds from stepping down into the ring and teaching that idiot some manners, my composure fraying. Shinsha, perched comfortably on my lap, stiffened and peered up at me with wide, worried eyes. Yikes, she breathed. Now he's done it. Kat's angry, she's gonna kill him now. I let out a soft, controlled sigh and pushed my urge to intervene back into its cage. Just as Shinsha predicted, Kat moved the instant the insult left his mouth. A blur of motion faster than most could follow, and then, clang, the sharp, ringing sound of steel striking stone echoed through the arena. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then the crowd gasped as something small and glinting rolled across the floor. Gaia's wrist. He staggered back, clutching his severed arm, his face contorted with pain and disbelief. How dare you!" he screamed, voice cracking in both fury and humiliation. Kat stood there silently, blades still lowered, her expression cold and unyielding. A faint shimmer of magic trailed along her twin swords as she calmly flicked away a drop of blood. Her voice, when it came, was low, dangerously calm. "You should watch your mouth when you talk about my mommy." The tension in the air was palpable, even the audience fell silent. One wrong move from Gai now, and there'd be nothing left for the healers to fix. Lucky for Gai, he had the sense to stay silent. With gritted teeth, he yanked out a vial of full potion, uncorked it, and sprayed it directly onto his severed wrist. The crowd collectively gasped as the miracle unfolded before their eyes. Muscle, bone, and skin reformed in an instant, the wound sealing as though it had never existed. Those unfamiliar with Tempest's finest potion stared in shock and awe. A small smile tugged at my lips. Well, that turned out nicely. A public demonstration of our product's power, unplanned, but highly effective. I could already imagine the surge in full potion sales after this. Gai, now restored and brimming with renewed fury, snatched his sword from the ground and charged forward again. He launched a flurry of strikes, each faster and more desperate than the last. But Kat didn't move. She remained rooted in place, calmly deflecting every blow with just one of her twin swords. Her movements were fluid yet effortless, her expression unchanging, almost bored. Clang, clang, clang. Finally, with a frustrated snarl, Gai leapt back, his face red with anger. "You cheating bastard! There's no way someone like you could block my attacks unless you're cheating." Kat tilted her head slightly, her gaze cold and unimpressed. "Cheating," she said softly. "If you can't even land a single hit, maybe you should reconsider who's the weak one here." The crowd erupted into cheers and laughter at her cutting remark while Gaia's face twisted into something halfway between rage and humiliation. He turned toward my viewing box, fury twisting his expression into something utterly vile. "You're so scared of losing that you even have this brat cheating for you," he roared, spittle flying as his voice echoed through the arena. The crowd fell silent. No one dared breathe. And Kat's aura flared. The air around her shimmered like heat over stone, her eyes narrowing into slits of pure wrath. In the blink of an eye, she vanished from sight. Or so it seemed to most of the spectators. But I saw it clearly. She didn't teleport, she moved, faster than the human eye could follow, a blur of motion that swept past Gai like a gust of wind. For a moment, nothing happened. Then came the faint metallic sound clink, and Gaia's sword arm slid cleanly from his shoulder, thudding to the ground with a dull, wet slap. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Gai staggered forward, eyes wide in disbelief, before collapsing to his knees, clutching the bleeding stump as crimson stained the stone beneath him. Kat stood behind him, calm and composed, twin blades gleaming faintly under the light. "I warned you," she said softly, her tone cool as frost. I sighed, resting my chin on my hand. Honestly, she definitely got that temper from Ren, I swear. Ren, standing just behind me, gasped as if I'd personally insulted her very soul. "Excuse me," she protested, her tone dripping with mock offense. "She handled it perfectly. He's still alive. Besides," she folded her arms, utterly unapologetic, "that's the perfect way to deal with idiots who don't know their place." I could only sigh again, deciding it was best to ignore her completely before she somehow turned this into my fault. My gaze returned to the arena just in time to see Gai stumble to his feet, hatred twisting his expression. You, how dare." Before he could even finish, Kat's foot shot up in a precise, elegant arc, then crack. Her heel connected with his chest, launching him backward like a cannonball. He slammed into the wall outside the ring with a thump, then coughing up blood he fell to ground with a noticeable thud, kicking up a cloud of dust. Sokka immediately rushed over, splashing a vial of full potion on his battered body before glancing up toward Diablo. "Gai is unconscious," she declared breathlessly. "A brilliant move. I think the battle's over." Diablo's crimson eyes gleamed, a rare smile tugging at his lips as he raised his hand. His voice, calm yet commanding, echoed through the stadium. "By the rules of the tournament, Katarina is victorious. And the winner is Katarina AAA. Sokka's proclamation was nearly drowned out by the thunderous roar of the crowd. Cheers, applause, and even some whistles erupted, the arena trembling with excitement. The arena was still buzzing with the aftershocks of Kat's overwhelming victory when Soka's clear, excited voice rose again, brimming with energy. Next up we have match 3 of the round of 16. On one side, the graceful swordswoman Shizu. And on the other, a proud Dragonute and devout member of the Dragon Faithful Stella. The audience erupted in cheers, eager for another dazzling clash. From the left gate, Shizu entered the arena with her usual quiet grace. Her long dark hair flowed behind her like a silken shadow, her golden eyes calm and focused beneath the sunlight. Every step she took carried the serenity of a seasoned warrior, and when she drew her blade with a soft shing, the glint of steel mirrored her unwavering resolve. From the opposite side strode Stella, a striking young Dragonute whose blue hair, tied neatly into twin tails, shimmered like polished sapphire. Her eyes, a matching shade of deep azure, burned with determination and pride. She wore the uniform of the Dragon Faithful, its sharp blue and white lines accentuating her athletic build. A delicate hairband rested atop her head, a subtle nod to her faith and discipline. The two stood across from each other, elegance and composure meeting youthful zeal and burning devotion. Even from the VIP box, I could feel the tension humming through the air. Shizu's aura was calm and measured, like a tranquil lake. Stella's, by contrast, flared with vibrant heat, the unrestrained spirit of a dragon burning beneath human form. Soka raised her arm dramatically, her voice cutting through the roaring crowd. "Are both fighters ready?" Shizu offered a polite nod. Stella smirked confidently. "Then begin." As Soka's shout echoed across the arena, both combatants moved at once like arrows loosed from drawn bows. Stella closed the distance in a heartbeat, her knuckle gauntlets gleaming under the sun as she drove a powerful punch straight toward Shizu's midsection. But Shizu's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. In that instant, she pivoted gracefully, her blade flashing in a clean horizontal arc clang. The sharp ring of steel meeting metal echoed through the arena. The clash lasted only a heartbeat before they disengaged. Shizu's feet slid lightly across the sand, her breathing steady, movements refined and composed. Every motion she made was measured, no wasted effort, no unnecessary flourish, just pure technique. Stella grinned, her sharp teeth flashing. "Not bad, but I'm just getting started." With a sudden burst of energy, she lunged again, fists flying in a flurry of rapid strikes. Each blow was fast and precise, the air rippling around her as her knuckle gauntlets sparked against Shizu's blade. Clang, 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 Shizu weaved between the blows, her sword turning aside each strike with effortless precision. When Stella feinted left and spun for a backhand, Shizu dipped under the swing, her dark hair brushing the air as her sword traced a gleaming line towards Stella's exposed flank, only for Stella's gauntlets to intercept the strike at the last instant. After trading dozens of swift exchanges, each of Stella's punches effortlessly parried, redirected, or dodged, Shizu remained as calm and composed as ever, her breathing steady and her expression unchanged. Stella, however, was visibly growing irritated. Her attacks had weight, precision, and power, but not once had she managed to even graze her opponent. "TCH, you're just toying with me," she growled, stepping back and drawing in a deep breath. The air around her began to ripple. "Fine, then let's see how you handle this." Her aura flared violently, blue energy swirling around her body like a miniature storm. A pair of shimmering, scaled wings burst from her back, spreading wide with a gust of wind. Two curved horns emerged from her head, glowing faintly as her eyes burned with draconic power. The crowd gasped in awe. "That's the dragon body skill," someone shouted. An aura of sheer pressure radiated from Stella, her every movement exuding raw might. She took her stance, scales glimmering in the sunlight. Shizu, on the other hand, simply tilted her head slightly, her eyes still calm. Then, with a faint sigh, she sheathed her blade. Her voice dropped to a quiet murmur. "I'd rather not bully the weak." A flicker of light shimmered across her wrist, the bracelet she wore glowed faintly before the sword in her hand vanished entirely, as if swallowed by the light. She lowered her stance slightly, one foot sliding forward, hands raised loosely in front of her, a martial posture, elegant yet unassuming. The air around her stilled. Even without her sword, her presence seemed sharper somehow. Across from her, Stella flapped her wings once, grinning with renewed confidence. Stella lunged forward with a roar, her wings propelling her like a blue streak across the arena. Her first punch shattered the air itself, the shockwave rippling outward, but Shizu tilted her head just slightly, letting it pass harmlessly beside her cheek. Without hesitation, Stella followed up a spinning kick aimed at Shizu's ribs. Whoosh! The wind whistled from the force, yet Shizu simply shifted her weight, her foot gliding across the stone floor in a graceful sidestep. The kick missed by mere inches. "Stop dodging," Stella growled, frustration clear in her voice. Shizu's calm reply came like a whisper. Then stop missing. That only made Stella angrier. She punched again left, right, then a rising knee, each strike faster and heavier than the last. But Shizu weaved through it all with fluid, effortless precision. Her movements were minimal yet perfect, each dodge brushing past the attack by a hair's breadth. Then, finally, a counter. Shizu's feint came so naturally it looked like part of the rhythm of battle, her fist cutting through the air with deceptive grace. Stella instinctively reacted, catching Shizu's wrist and twisting her body, ready to slam her into the ground. But then whump. In a blur, Shizu's body spun midair like a leaf caught in the wind. Using the momentum, Shizu flipped Stella instead. The crowd gasped as Stella's feet left the ground and she was hurled clean over Shizu's shoulder, slamming down onto the stone floor with a resonant thud. For a moment, dust rose from the impact. Then Stella groaned, her wings twitching as she forced herself up. Shizu didn't move, she simply waited, composed as ever. Stella's teeth ground together, her pride refusing to yield. Blue aura flared around her as she stood up, the air rippling with energy as she pressed her palms together, pulling back into a stance that vibrated with draconic might. "You asked for it," she shouted. Her wings spread wide, and the air trembled, then she thrust her palm forward. Dragon roar. As Stella's right arm snapped forward, Shizu's hand closed on her wrist in a motion so subtle most would have missed it. A quick twist, and Shizu drove her palm firmly into Stella's abdomen. Thud. The impact was deceptively soft, but it stole the wind from the Dragonute in an instant. Stella staggered back, breath gone from her lungs. Shizu didn't pause. She stepped forward with composed, unhurried grace, gripped the collar of Stella's outfit, and heaved, throwing her with a single, fluid motion. The Dragonute hit the stone with a heavy thud and lay still. The throw had been delivered with such controlled force that Stella failed to rise immediately. Shizu extended a hand, offering aid rather than triumph. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You're clever. You must have realized by now that victory isn't assured." She helped Stella to her feet, then met the other girl's eyes with an even, steady look. "Yield now, and walk away with honor. Persist, and I will have no choice but to remove you from the arena." The crowd hummed with a mixture of relief and awe. Shizu's restraint felt less like mercy and more like an inevitability. Stella's chest heaved as she tested her feet, pride warred with exhaustion. The choice hung heavy in the air. Stella's face twisted in conflict for a moment, her pride as a warrior and her reason as a fighter clashing silently behind her eyes. Her fists trembled, wings twitching slightly before, at last, she exhaled a long, defeated sigh. "I yield," she muttered, lowering her gaze. Soka quickly stepped closer, her voice clear and formal. "Do you accept defeat, Stella?" Stella hesitated one last time, then nodded firmly. "Yes." At that, Soka raised her hand high, her tone ringing across the arena. "The winner is Shizu." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Shizu simply offered a polite bow, her calm, gentle smile unchanging as she turned to help Stella fully to her feet. As Stella made her way toward the exit, she was greeted by Foss and a sleepy-looking harpy waiting just outside the arena gate. "Stella, that was awesome," Foss cheered, trying to lift Stella's mood. "You held your own against Shizu for so long I could barely keep up with watching that." The harpy beside her yawned, lazily fluttering her wings. Yeah, that was pretty good," she murmured, her tone sluggish but sincere. Stella smiled faintly, rubbing the back of her neck. "Thanks, though I still lost." She was just on a different level. Foss crossed her arms and grinned. "Still, you looked amazing out there." With that, the three of them began walking toward the waiting area together, Foss chatting animatedly while the harpy trudged along half asleep. And as they disappeared through the gate, Shizu silently turned, and left the arena with quiet grace, her expression as calm as ever. The arena gradually fell silent as the two towering figures entered the stage. Soka raised her hand, her voice ringing clearly over the expectant crowd. Next match. Guild Commander of Tempest's Yellow Numbers vs Bavix, leader of the Bovids. A deep murmur rippled through the stands. Both warriors were known for their brute strength, and the audience could already feel the tension thickening in the air. Geld stood firm, his massive frame unshaken. In one hand, he gripped the meat crusher cleaver, its jagged edge gleaming faintly, in the other, his scale shield, as solid and dependable as the warrior himself. His calm expression and measured breathing spoke of discipline honed through countless battles. Across from him loomed Bavix, a towering Bovid warrior with a pair of curved horns, a heavy axe, and a gleaming round shield. His nostrils flared with each breath, steam rising faintly in the cool air. For a moment, the two simply stared each other down, mountain against mountain, power meeting power. Then Sokka's voice cut through the stillness. Ready, and begin. The ground trembled as both warriors charged forward. Bavix hefted his massive axe and brought it crashing down, but the blow met Geld's shield with a resounding clang, the impact sending sparks flying. Geld pushed forward, forcing Bavix's weapon aside and driving him a step back. Without missing a beat, Geld swung his heavy cleaver in a brutal counterattack, but Bavix narrowly evaded it with a quick backstep, the blade slicing cleanly through the air where he'd stood a heartbeat before. The battle raged for nearly 20 minutes, a fierce exchange of strength and endurance that held the crowd spellbound. Each strike, block, and counter felt like a clash between two mountains, unyielding, relentless. Finally, Bavix raised his voice with a roar. It's over. He hurled his great axe, the weapon spinning like a deadly boulder crusher. But Geld met it head-on, his shield braced firm as the weapon crashed into it with thunderous force and stopped cold. In the same instant, Geld surged forward, closing the distance in a single bound. Bavix, caught off guard and still reeling from his failed attack, couldn't react in time as Geld's cleaver came down in a decisive swing, ending the fight in one clean motion. Sokka hurried across the arena, her footsteps light but swift. She knelt beside Bavix, who lay motionless on the ground, and uncorked a vial of full potion. The shimmering liquid glowed faintly as she poured it over his wounds. Instantly, the injuries began to close, his breathing evening out within seconds. Once she confirmed his condition had stabilized, Sokka stood up, raising her hand high. Bavix is unable to continue. The winner of this match, Geld. The crowd erupted in applause, cheering for the gentle orc who had once fought only to protect his people. Geld bowed respectfully to his fallen opponent before turning toward the stands, his expression calm but proud. Sokka lifted her hand high, her voice resounding across the arena. Up next, the enigmatic champion who's stolen the audience's admiration, Lion Mask faces Equix, the valiant leader of the Equinoid clan. Both competitors stepped into the arena, the air thick with anticipation. On one side stood Equix, the proud leader of the Equinoids, a towering humanoid horse with a dark, flowing mane. He raised his spear and shield, his presence radiating confidence and command. Across from him waited Lion Mask, or more precisely, the former demon lord Carrion himself. He wore no armor, no weapon, only the lion-headed mask that hid his true identity. To the spectators, he appeared to be just another fighter, yet his calm aura carried a quiet, unmistakable power. The crowd's cheers thundered through the Colosseum, eager for a clash between strength and pride. Equix pointed at his opponent, voice booming with conviction. Hey, you, I don't know who you are, but I'll defeat you here and win this tournament. I'll prove my worth and earn a place among Lady Rimuru's elite Big Four. He snorted, his tail flicking as he added proudly. Let me show you how much stronger I am than that fool Bavix who lost in his very first match. Lion Mask chuckled, a deep, amused sound that carried through the arena. Ha ha ha, been a while since I've had a chance to kick some ass. Let's see if you can make it fun for me, huh? His tone was relaxed, but there was an unmistakable fire behind his words. Then begin. Sokka's clear voice rang through the arena, and in the next instant, Equix burst forward like a thunderbolt. The ground trembled beneath his hooves as he charged, his spear raised high and gleaming with killing intent. He aimed to end the battle in a single, decisive strike. But Lion Mask didn't even flinch. His stance remained relaxed, almost lazy, as he watched Equix close the distance. At the very last moment, he tilted his body just slightly. The spear sliced through empty air. Before Equix could even register what had happened, Carrion's fist sank into his stomach with bone-cracking force. Goo! The impact reverberated like thunder. A violent shockwave tore through the arena, rattling the stone stands and sending a burst of wind outward. Equix's massive body was lifted off his feet and sent hurtling across the arena floor, his weapons flying from his grasp and clattering far beyond the ring's edge. When the dust settled, the proud Equinoid leader was sprawled near the boundary, gasping in pain, his armor cracked and dented. The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in disbelief. But Equix was far from finished. Thanks to the self-regeneration skill he'd gained after his evolution, his injuries rapidly healed, the dents in his armor smoothing as his body mended itself. Moments later, the Equinoid leader staggered to his feet, battered but unbroken. His weapons were gone, yet his pride as a warrior burned brighter than ever. With a fierce neigh-like roar, Equix charged once more, this time barehanded. Lion Mask chuckled, cracking his knuckles as he watched him approach. Hey, you still want to fight, huh? A grin curved beneath the mask. Then I'll end it this time. As Equix closed the distance, Lion Mosk's eyes sharpened. In a blur, he twisted his hips and delivered a single, devastating punch. The blow connected with a thunderous impact. Equix's massive form was launched clean out of the arena, crashing into the barrier wall before sliding motionless to the ground. Sokka immediately rushed forward, splashing a full potion over Equix's body. A glow of healing light enveloped him, confirming that his life was not in danger. Raising her hand, she turned to the stands and declared loudly, "Winner Lion Mask." The crowd erupted in cheers, shouting Lion Mask with awe and excitement. Lion Mask simply crossed his arms, chuckling beneath the mask as the dust settled around him. To be continued.